Hello, Sir Jacob and everyone. My name is Roel R. Lumakang, a third-year college student of BS Ed English. Welcome to my 1 hour and 30 minutes video presentation about performance assessment. Performance assessment. What is it? Performance assessment, also known as alternative or authentic assessment, is a form of testing that requires students to perform a task rather than select an answer from a ready-made list. For example, a student may be asked to explain historical events, generate scientific hypotheses, solve math problems, converse in a foreign language, or conduct research on an assigned topic. Experienced raters, either teachers or other trained staff, then judge the quality of the student's work based on an agreed upon set of criteria. This new form of assessment is most widely used to directly assess writing ability based on texts produced by students under test instructions. How does it work? Following are some methods that have been used successfully to assess performance. Number 1, open-ended or extended response exercises are questions or other prompts that require students to explore a topic orally or in writing. Students might be asked to describe their observations from a science experiment or present arguments an historic character would make concerning a particular proposition. For example, what would Abraham Lincoln argue about the causes of the Civil War? That is my example of open-ended or extended response exercises. Next, number 2, extended tasks are assignments that require sustained attention in a single work area and are carried out over several hours or longer. Such tasks could include drafting, reviewing, and revising a poem, conducting and explaining the results of a science experiment on hypothesis, or even painting a car in Photoshop. Number 3, portfolios are selected collections of a variety of performance-based work. A portfolio might include a student's test pieces and a student's evaluation of the strengths and weakness of several pieces. The portfolio may also contain some work in progress that illustrate the improvements the student has made over time. These methods, like all types of performance assessments, require that students actively develop their approaches to the task under defined conditions. knowing that their work will be evaluated according to agreed upon standards. This requirement distinguishes performance assessment from other forms of testing. Why try it? Because they require students to actively demonstrate what they know. Performance assessments may be a more valid indicator of students' knowledge and abilities. There is a big difference between answering multiple choice questions on how to make an oral presentation and actually making an oral presentation. More important, performance assessment can provide impetus for improving instruction and increase students' understanding of what they need to know and be able to do. In preparing their students to work on a performance task, teachers describe what the task entails and the standards that will be used to evaluate performance. This requires a careful description of the elements of good performance and allows students to judge their own work as they proceed. What does the research say? Active learning. Research suggests that learning how and where information can be applied should be a central part of all curricular areas. Also, students exhibit greater interest and levels of learning when they are required to organize facts around major concepts and actively construct their own understanding of the concepts in a rich variety of contexts. Performance assessments require students to structure and apply information and thereby helps to engage students in this type of learning. Curriculum-based testing. Performance assessments should be based on the curriculum rather than constructed by someone unfamiliar with a particular state, district, or school curriculum. This allows the curriculum to drive the test rather than be encumbered by testing requirements that disrupt instruction, as is often the case. Research shows that most teachers shape their teaching in a variety of ways to meet the requirements of tests. Primarily because of this impact of testing on instruction, many practitioners favor test reform and the use performance assessments. Worthwhile task. Performance tasks should be worth teaching to. That is the task need to present. Interesting possibilities for applying an array of curriculum-related knowledge and skills. The best performance tasks are inherently instructional, actively engaging students in worthwhile learning activities. Students may be encouraged by them to search out additional information or try different approaches and, in some situations, to work in teams. What does it cost? These positive features or performance assessment come at a price. Performance assessment requires a greater expense of time, planning, and thought from students and teachers. One teacher reports, "We can't just march through the curriculum anymore. It's hard. I spent more time planning and more time coaching. At first, my students just wanted to be told what to do. I had to help them to start thinking. Users also need to pay close attention to technical and equity issues to ensure that the assessments are fair to all students. This is all the more important as there has been very little research and development on performance assessment in the environment of a high stakes accountability system where administrative and resource decisions are affected by measures of student performance. What are the examples of successful strategies and programs? Charlotte Higuchi is a third and fourth grade teacher at Farmdale Elementary School in Los Angeles. Regarding assessment and instruction as inseparable aspects of teaching, Ms. Higuchi uses a wide array of assessment strategies to determine how well her students are doing and to make instructional decisions. She uses systematic rating procedures, keeps records of student performances on task, and actively involves students in keeping journals and evaluating their own work. Ms. Higuchi can be seen in action along with other experts and practitioners in the videotape. Alternatives for measuring performance by NC Real and CRIST. Second examples of successful strategies and programs is William Simmons. William Simmons is the superintendent of Alcoa City Schools in Alcoa, Tennessee, seeking higher, more meaningful student standards through curriculum reform. Dr. Simmons works with school staff and the community to create a new curriculum focused on standards and an assessment linked to the curriculum. Comments and advice from Dr. Simmons and other practitioners and experts are available on the audio tape Conversations about Authentic Assessment. The third examples of successful strategies and programs is Richard B. Mills is the Commissioner of Education in the Vermont Department of Education. Vermont is assessing 4th and 8th grade students in writing and mathematics using 3 methods: a portfolio, a best piece from the portfolio, and a set of performance tests. Other states that have been very active in developing and implementing performance assessments include California, Arizona, Maryland, New York, Connecticut, and Kentucky. Where can you get more information? On the screen, I will be showing information of their performance assessments details. Is a performance assessment formative or summative? Performance assessment can be used as either a formative or summative tool. Judge based on a rubric and given a score, that would be an example of using a performance task as a summative assessment. How do you create a performance assessment? Performance-based assessments have recently experienced a re-emergence in education literature and curricula. In the 1990s, performance-based assessments became a valid alternative to traditional multiple choice tests. In the years that followed, legislative requirements shifted the emphasis to standardized testing, which caused a decline in non-traditional testing methods. Zarling, Hammond, and Adamson 2013. Currently, more school districts and universities are seeking authentic measures of student learning, and performance-based assessments have become increasingly relevant. What is a performance-based assessment? The definition of performance-based assessments varies greatly depending on author, discipline, publication, and intended audience. Palm 2018. In general, a performance-based assessment measures students' ability to apply the skills and knowledge learned from a unit or units of study. Typically, the task challenges students to use their higher order thinking skills to create a product or complete a process. John 2010. Tasks can range from a simple constructed response, example, short answer, to a complex design proposal of a sustainable neighborhood. Arguably, the most genuine assessments require students to complete a task that closely mirrors the responsibilities of a professional, example, artist, engineer, laboratory technician, financial analyst, or consumer advocate. What are the essential components of a performance-based assessment? Although performance-based assessments vary, the majority of them share key characteristic. First and foremost, the assessment accurately measures one or more specific core standards. Additionally, it is complex, authentic, process/product oriented, open-ended, and the last is time-bound. Normally, students are presented with an open-ended question that may produce several different correct answers. Chan 2010, MacTig 2015. Task: there is a sense of urgency for the product to be developed or the process to be determined. As in most real-world situations, how can teachers create performance-based assessments for their students? I found a simplified version of our planning loosely based on the backward design process. First, identify goals of the performance-based assessment. In this instance, the teacher wanted to challenge her students to use critical thinking and problem-solving skills. She also wanted them to exhibit less codependence and more individuality while completing this assessment. The teacher did not want students to rely on her direction about how to complete each step of the assessment. Second, select the appropriate course standards. Once the goals were identified, she selected the common core standards to be addressed. With this performance assessment, she decided that the assessment should measure students' understanding of conditional probability and rules of probability. Third, review assessments and identify learning gaps. This was a very important step. We'll look at the current worksheets that students were completing for the unit. Two-way frequency tables were a large part of the assignments. Next, we'll look at what was missing and noted that there was very little relevant real-world application. As a result, we decided to create performance-based assessment that was also reality-based. Moreover, this task would require students to analyze two-way frequency tables along with other charts and graphs. Fourth, design the scenario. After brainstorming a few different scenarios, we settled on a situation where the students would decide if an inmate should be granted parole or remain in prison. This scenario included 5K components: setting, rule, audience, time frame, and product. Fifth, gather or create materials. Depending on the scenario, this step may or may not be needed. For this particular assessment, we wanted students to calculate the probability of the inmate returning to prison. For their review, I created 7 different documents that included pie charts, bar graphs, and two-way frequency tables. All of the information was based on statistics from government agencies, such as the Federal Bureau of Prisons and Bureau of Justice Statistics. 6. Develop a learning plan. We wanted to be careful not to teach to the test in preparing students for the performance-based assessment. We needed to strike a balance between teaching the content, example, probability given two independent events, and preparing students for the task. Example for that, interpreting the validity of media resource. We brainstormed 6 different formative assessments that would need to be in place before students completed the performance task. However, we also acknowledge that this part of my plan would need to be constantly reviewed and revised depending on student learning needs. Example, public comment session scenario. Ashley, an inmate at Texahoma State Women's Correctional Institution, is serving 3 to 5 years for embezzlement and assault. After 3 years, this inmate is up for parole. Once a month, the Inmate Review Board offers public comment sessions. The sessions are open to all interested parties who want to voice their support or opposition to an inmate's release from prison. Task: you are Ashley's former probation officer. Okay, and the warden requested that you attend the public comment session. You have been asked to review the following documents and present your opinion. Should Ashley be released from prison early or stay from remainder of her sentence? You have been granted 3 to 5 minutes to speak to the review board. Your speech must be short but detailed with strong evidence to support your decision. Documents. Number 1, criminal history report. Number 2, article announcing a new web series on embezzlement. Number 3, blog post about prison nurseries. Number 4, letter to the parole board from the inmate's mother and son. Number 5, newsletter about the incarceration rates in the state. Number 6, press release about a prison work program. Last, number 7, research brief on the recidivism rate of nonviolent offenders. I welcome your thoughts about performance-based assessments. My another example of how do you do a performance assessment. 5 steps to a performance evaluation system. Keep your staff productive and motivated by conducting regular performance evaluations. Performance evaluations which provide employers with an opportunity to assess their employees' contributions to the organization are essential to developing a powerful work team. Yet in some practices, positions and practice managers put performance evaluations on the back burner, often because of the time involved and the difficulties of critiquing employees with whom they work closely. The benefits of performance evaluations outweigh these challenges, though when done as part of a performance evaluation system that includes a standard evaluation form, standard performance measures, guidelines delivering feedback, and disciplinary procedures. Performance evaluations can enforce the acceptable boundaries of performance, promote staff recognition and effective communication, and motivate individuals to do their best for themselves and practice. The primary goals of a performance evaluation system are to provide an equitable measurement of an employee's contribution to the workforce, produce accurate appraisal documentation to protect both the employee and the employer, and obtain a high level of quality and quantity in the work produced. To create a performance evaluation system in your practice, follow these 5 steps. Number 1, develop an evaluation form. Number 2, identify performance measures. Number 3, set guidelines for feedback. Number 4, create disciplinary and termination procedures. And number 5, set an evaluation schedule. Let's go back. Number 1, develop an evaluation form. Performance evaluations should be conducted fairly, consistently, and objectively to protect your employees' interests and to protect your practice from legal liability. One way to ensure consistency is to use a standard evaluation form for each evaluation. The form you use should focus only on the essential job performance areas. Limiting these areas of focus makes the assessment more meaningful and relevant and allows you and the employee to address the issues that matter most. You don't need to cover every detail of an employee's performance in an evaluation. For most staff positions, the job performance areas that should be included on a performance evaluation form are job knowledge and skills, quality of work, quantity of work habits, and attitude. In each area, the appraiser should have a range of descriptors to choose from. Example, far below requirements, meets requirements, exceeds requirements. Far exceeds requirements. Depending on how specific the descriptors are, it's often important that the appraiser also have space on the form to provide the reasoning behind his or her rating. Performance evaluations for those in management positions should assess more than just the essential job performance areas mentioned above. They should also assess the employees' people skills, ability to motivate and provide direction, overall communication skills, and ability to build teams and solve problems. You should have either a separate evaluation form for managers or a special managerial section added to your standard evaluation form. Number two, identify performance measures. Standard performance measures which allow you to evaluate an employee's job performance objectively can cut down on the amount of time and stress involved in filling out the evaluation form. Although developing these measures can be one of the more time consuming parts of creating a performance evaluation system, it's also one of the most powerful. If you have current job descriptions for each position in your practice, you've already taken the first step toward creating standard performance measures, which are essentially specific quantity and quality goals attached to the task listed in a job description. A job description alone can serve as a measurement tool during an evaluation if, for example, you're assessing whether an employee's skills match the requirements of the position. But standard performance measures take the job description one step further. For example, one task listed in a receptionist job description might entering new and updated patient registrations into the computer. The standard performance measure for that task might be to enter 6 to 12 registrations per day quantity with an error rate of less than 2% quality. Standard performance measures can even objectively measure some of the more subjective job performance areas such as work habits. For example, you can establish an objective measure for attendance by defining the acceptable number of times an employee can be tardy or absent during a specific time frame. However, standard performance measures don't always work for other subjective areas, such as attitude. In these cases, it's still important to be as objective as possible in your evaluation. Don't attempt to describe attitude, for instance. Instead, describe the employee's behavior, which is what conveys the attitude, and the consequences of that behavior for the practice. For example, this employee has failed to support her co-workers when another member of her department is absent. She refuses to take on the additional task required to process patients in a timely manner. This behavior causes patient backlog, places a burden on staff, compromises effective teamwork. To begin developing standard performance measures in your practice, review the job descriptions for each position and select the key components of the job that can be specifically measured. Then, work with the employees in each position to gather quantitative data. Examine historical patterns of volume and determine qualitative measurements that reflect the practices. Mission and goals. Depending on how large your practice is and how many positions need standard performance measures, you may want to select a committee to develop them. Then, with help from the employees in each position, the supervisors should maintain them. It's important to keep job descriptions and standard performance measures as current as possible. Otherwise, when an employee doesn't measure up to the standards you've set, you can't be sure whether he or she has a performance problem, or whether your expectations of the position have become unrealistic based on increased volume or a change in circumstances. Number 3, set guidelines for feedback. Feedback is what performance evaluations are all about. So before you implement your performance evaluation system, make sure that everyone who will be conducting evaluation knows what kind of feedback to give, how to give, and how to get it from the employee in return. Give balanced feedback. Don't make the common error of glossing over an employee's deficiencies and focusing only on his or her strengths. It is by understanding their weaknesses that employees can take ownership of their performance and role in the practice. And when given the support they need to make improvements in these areas, employees learn to take pride in their work and are willing to take on new challenges with confidence. Outline expectations for improvement. When you address areas where improvement is indeed, outline your expectations for improvement and how you intend to help the employee meet them. For example, if an employee is speaking harshly with other employees and does not seem tolerant with patients, give the employee some examples of his or her behavior and offer some suggestions to resolve the problem, such as role playing sessions, or a communication skills / customer service workshop or seminar. Define the boundaries by letting the employee know what is acceptable and what will not be tolerated, and then establish a plan for monitoring performance and re-evaluating the employee. Encourage feedback from the employee. After you've discussed the results of the evaluation with the employee, Encourage him or her to give you some non-defensive feedback. Ask the employee whether he or she agrees with your assessment and or invite suggestions for improvement. For example, you seem to become impatient and short with patience when the position is running late, since there are times when running late cannot be avoided. How do you suggest we handle this to avoid such a reaction? This should lead to an open exchange of information that will allow you and the employee to better understand each other's perspective. Number 4, creative disciplinary and termination procedures. In some cases, even after a thorough performance evaluation and a discussion of expected improvements, an employee will continue to perform poorly. You need to be prepared to handle such a situation by having well defined written disciplinary and termination procedures in place. These procedures should outline the actions that will be taken when performance deteriorates, a verbal warning, a written warning. If there is no improvement or a recurrence and termination, if the situation is not ultimately resolved, verbal warning. This should be given in private, with the behavior or reason for the discipline clearly stated. For example, I observe you talking disrespectfully to another employee at the front desk. You said she was brain dead and tossed a chart at her. We will not tolerate disrespect in the workplace. Furthermore, this outburst could be overheard from the reception room. If this occurs again, a report will be written up and placed in your file. Do you understand the importance of this? After the verbal warning is given, allow the employee to respond, but keep the exchange brief. Written warning. How you handle the written warning plays a critical role in the success of your disciplinary and termination procedures. This is the time to make it clear to the employee just how serious his or her performance problem is. Unfortunately, many practices fail to do this and or to follow through with termination if necessary. Once the written warning is mishandled in this way, it no longer has any merit. A standard written warning form should include the following: a description of the behavior or problem that includes objective findings, the measurable actions and changes expected of the employee, the support the employer will provide for improvement, a description of what will occur, example, unpaid time off or termination, and when, example, after one or more occurrence or two. If the warning is not heeded, the signature of the employee and the appraiser and the date of the warning. Termination. Explain the reason for the termination, but to do so briefly and objectively to avoid getting into an elaborate discussion that puts you in a defensive position. Validate the employee as a person, perhaps by giving a positive slant to the employee's potential in the job market. For example, although an employee might have been a poor file clerk for you because he or she didn't pay attention to detail, the employee may have a friendly personality that would make him or her a good telephone operator. Also, let the employee know what will become of any accrued vacation or sick leave, pension benefits, etc. Know your state's laws on these issues. Finally, ask if the employee has any further questions and then assist the employee in retrieving all of his or her belongings and living with as much dignity as possible. If you handle termination well, you're less likely to have an employee who wants to get even by badmouthing you in the community or seeking legal revenge. Fifth, set an evaluation schedule. Once you've built your performance evaluation system, the evaluation form, the performance measures, the feedback guidelines, and the disciplinary procedures, you just need to decide when to conduct the performance evaluations. Some practices do all employee evaluations at the same time of year, while others conduct them within 30 days of each employee's anniversary of employment. The latter may work better since it spreads the work of the evaluations out for employer and employee. However you decide to schedule the evaluations, ensure that each appraiser consistently meets the deadline. Ignoring employees' overdue evaluations will make them feel devalued and may hurt morale and performance. A performance evaluation system should be a key component of your practice structure. When implemented effectively, it ensures fairness and accountability, promotes growth and development, and encourage a sense of pride in your employees. Contributions to the practice. Performance assessments have the advantage of being able to provide clear evidence of students' achievements. In addition, they are useful for a wide range of classroom activities, including essays, science projects, public speaking, and multimedia projects. Performance assessment is an excellent method for addressing skills at the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy. What is the first step in creating a performance assessment? The first step in creating a performance assessment is defining the target. Determining what is it you are going to assess. This can generally be accomplished by reviewing the standards and objectives. For example, the following benchmarks clearly require assessments other than objective quizzes, like example of the subjects: language arts, response to speakers by asking questions, making contributions, and paraphrasing what is said. Subject of science determines that the properties of materials, example density and volume, can be compared and measured. Example using rulers, balances, and thermometers. Visual arts creates two-dimensional and three-dimensional works of art that reflect competency and craftsmanship gained from the visual arts that can enhance and deepen understanding of life. Mathematics constructs, interprets, and uses scale drawings, such as those based on number lines and maps to solve real-world problems. After the target is defined, the next step is to create a task that will allow the students to demonstrate their knowledge, reasoning skills, and or attitudes. This task should be authentic, real world, feasible in time, space, and cost, fair, not biased on gender, race, etc. Flexible, allow multiple outcomes and observable. For example, the performance task may be that students conduct a science experiment, create a clay sculpture, or write a position paper that advocates a change in the school dress code. After the task is defined, a rubric can be developed to assess the task. What are the performance assessment tools? Peer review, having students assess themselves and each other. Portfolios, a collection of evidence to demonstrate mastery of a given set of concepts. Rubrics, a set of evaluation criteria based on learning goals and student performance. Reading reports, tips for assessing reading reports. Why is performance assessment important? Assessment is useful. Well-crafted performance assessments will help teachers gauge the levels of student understanding, help the teacher to correct any student misunderstandings, and provide instruction needed to move thinking and learning along. What are the 5 important points of performance assessment? Key performance indicators are number 1, productivity. Number 2, quality of work. Number 3, initiative. Number 4, teamwork. And number 5, problem solving. What are the key features of a performance assessment? Features of good performance assessment. Good assessment share 5 key features. Number 1, clear targets. Provide clear descriptions of specific achievement, expectations to be assessed. Measure one or more of the 4 achievement expectations. Assure that evaluators understand and remain aware of what they are assessing. Number 2, focus purpose. Clarify the intended uses of the assessment results. Specify whose information needs the assessment will meet teachers, curriculum developers, and policymakers. Number 3, proper method. Use an assessment method that is suited to the assessment goals, such as essays, direct communication, selected response, or extended investigations. Number 4, sound sampling. Provide a representative sample of all the questions that can be asked. Produce results of a maximum quality and minimum cost in time and effort. Yield confident inferences about how the respondent would have done given all possible exercises. Number 5, accurate assessment free of bias and distortion. Present sources of inference and error that may have affected the development and implementation of the assessment. Anticipate sources of bias that can create ambiguity in results. That was the 5 key features of good performance assessment. Performance assessment involves students taking part in skill building activities rather than answering questions about how to perform those skills on paper. Features of a performance assessment task are A, real-world scenarios. B, authentic and a complex process. C, high-order thinking. And letter D, transparent evaluation criteria. Performance assessment is a good opportunity for professors to personalize their courses and can act as an effective formative assessment when combined with other forms of assessment. Components of performance assessment. A comprehensive performance assessment system should contain some variation of the following components. Developmental checklist. Checklist covering domains such as language and literacy. Mathematical thinking and physical development are designed to reflect developmentally appropriate practices. Teachers use checklists throughout the year to create profiles of children's individualized progress in developing skills, acquiring knowledge, and mastering important behaviors. Portfolios. These purposeful collections of children's work illustrates their efforts, progress, and achievements over time. Teachers and children can compile the collections together from work completed in the classroom. As they talk together about the child's interests and progress, they develop a new activities for the child to focus on. Summary report. A summary report consists of a brief narrative summary of each child's classroom performance. It is based on teacher observation and records that are kept as part of the system. In completing this summary, teachers should carefully review the checklist and portfolios and then make overall judgments in order to report to parents, administrators, and others about each child's activities and progress. The three basic components of performance assessment: developmental checklist, portfolios, and summary reports are all necessary. Without ongoing checklists, teachers could not keep track of children's progress toward widely accepted curriculum goals. Without portfolios, differences in the quality of one child's work over time might be hidden, and children's ability to take an active role in evaluating their own work ignored. Without summary reports, easily understandable information for parents, teachers, and school administrators would be available. Together, the three components constitute a dynamic, authentic performance system. Advocating for performance assessment. Whenever you gather with other professionals, parents, your supervisor, principal, or members of your school board, use the opportunity to promote the use of some kind of performance assessment in early childhood classrooms. Also, remember that whether you use an available system of performance or authentic assessment or develop a tool of your own, the actual examples of children's work that you have on file, as well as ongoing observations of their individual growth and development, are the strongest possible advocates for performance assessment. Use them to show the depth and breadth of information they contain about each child. No other approach has so much to say about what the child brings to the learning situation and what the learning situations brings to the child. Benefits of performance assessment. A system of developmental checklists, portfolios of children's work, and summary reports, when used together, can help you to recognize that children can express what they know and can in many different ways. Evaluate progress as well as performance. Evaluate the whole child. Involve children in the process of assessing their own growth. Establish a framework for observing children that is consistent with the principles of child development. Contribute to meaningful curriculum planning and design of developmentally appropriate educational interventions. Give parents specific, direct, and understandable information about their child. Collaborate with others, teachers, thus enhancing your own professional skills. Performance assessment is especially useful for assessing students' achievement of complex learning standard. Example, analyzing author's purpose. Assessing their ability to apply concepts they learn to solve problems. Example, using understanding of past presidential elections to predict what will happen in this presidential election, and assessing skills. Example, using an electronic library card catalog. As a colleague once said, the only way to know if they can swim is to put them in the pool. Some simple skills though. Example, kindergarten students making equal sets with colored counters are also best assessed by observing student performance. Performance tasks must be carefully designed so that the student responses really do give evidence of the knowledge and skills we are trying to assess. Performance criteria must be clear and help students focus on those things, particularly so they can show what they know. Performance tasks help show students what real work in a discipline looks like, what it means to be a writer. Mathematician, historian, or scientist, for example. And when students understand the criteria for success with a learning task and apply those criteria as they work, research shows that their performance and their achievement increases. Next time you are planning a unit, take a look at the learning goals you intend your students to achieve. Find one more that lend themselves to performance assessment and try it out. Using performance assessments to support student learning. Educators need ways to assess student learning that can also support students' higher order thinking skills, help improve teachers' instructional practices, and ultimately allow students to demonstrate college and career readiness through a culminating assessment, such as a graduate capstone or senior portfolio defense. In California, some of these educators participate in the California Performance Assessment Collaborative, or CPAC, a network that supports the implementation of high quality performance assessments. Performance assessments are part of a robust assessment system. They require students to show what they know rather than select answers from predetermined options on a multiple choice test. Examples of performance assessments include composing a few sentences in an open-ended short response, developing a true analysis in an essay, conducting a laboratory investigation, curating a portfolio of student work, and completing an original research paper. While these districts each have a unique approach, all are committed to assessing student learning in a meaningful way that is aligned to the outcomes they hope all students will achieve by graduation. 3 case starting conditions were important when introducing performance assessment within the districts. Technical assistance. Technical assistance, including professional learning supports, played an important role in all 3 districts. For example, each district worked closely with technical assistant providers to develop trainings, shared rubrics, and related resources. Opportunities to observe performance assessments in action. Opportunities to observe performance assessments also played an important role across the districts in terms of educating stakeholders, garnering buy-in, and ultimately seeking shared ownership of the work. Strategies to develop and scale performance assessments. Districts employed strategies with a clear vision for how students should experience the process and then evolve organically in response to schools' needs. The term performance assessment (PA) is typically used to refer to a class of assessment that is based on observation and judgment. That is, in PA or performance assessment, an assessor usually observes a performance or the product of a performance and judges its quality. For example, to judge one's competence to operate an automobile, it is normally required that one pass a road test, during which actually driving is observed and evaluated. Similarly, Olympic athletes are judged on the basis of observed performances. PA has long been used to judge proficiency in industrial, military, and artistic settings, and interest in its application to educational settings has grown at the start of the 21st century. Educators' interest in PA can be attributed to several factors. It has been argued that performance measures offer a potential advantage of increased validity over other forms of testing that rely on indirect indicators of a desired competence or proficiency. That is, to assess ability to spell, one might prefer to have direct evidence that a person can spell words correctly rather than inferring the ability from tasks that involve identifying misspelled words in a list. Proponents of performance assessment have identified many possible benefits, such as allowing a broad range of learning outcomes to be assessed and preserving the complex nature of disciplinary knowledge and inquiry, including conceptual understanding, problem solving skills, and the application of knowledge and understanding to unique situations. Of particular interest is the potential of PA to capture aspects of high order thinking and reasoning, which are difficult to test in other ways. Moreover, because some research has reported that teachers tend to adopt their instructional practice to reflect the form and content of external assessments, and because performance assessment tend to be better conventional forms of testing at capturing more complex instructional goals and intentions, it has been argued that teaching to the test might be a positive consequence if PA were used to evaluate student achievement. Finally, some proponents have argued that PA could be more equitable than other forms of assessment because PA can engage students in authentic, contextualized performance closely related to important instructional goals, thus avoiding the sources of bias associated with testing rapid recall of decontextualized information. Educational uses of performance assessment. Also, performance assessment has been employed in many educational settings, including the assessment of teachers. A primary use in education has been to assess student learning outcomes. PA has long been used in classrooms by teachers to determine what has been learned and by whom. PA may be applied in the classroom in informal ways. as when a teacher observes a student as she solves a problem during seat work, or in more formal ways, as when a teacher collects and scores students' reading essays. Within the classroom, PA can serve as a means of assigning course grades, communicating expectations, providing feedback to students, and guiding instructional decisions. When PA is used for internal classroom assessment, both the form and content of the assessment can be closely aligned with a teacher's instructional goals. Therefore, the use of performance assessment in the classroom has been seen by some as a promising means of accomplishing a long-standing elusive goal, namely the integration of instruction and assessment. Performance assessment has also been employed in the external assessment of student learning outcomes. PA receive significant attention from educators and assessment specialists during the latter part of the 1980s and throughout the 1990s. This is increased interest in PA occurred as subject matter standards were established and corresponding changes in instructional practice were envisioned. A growing dissatisfaction with selected response testing. Example, true slash false questions and multiple choice items, and an unawareness of advances in research in cognition and instruction also spawned interest in PA. Constructed response tasks. Example, task calling for brief or extended explanation or justifications became increasingly popular as a means of capturing much of what is valued instructionally in a form that could be included in an external assessment of student achievement. In addition, for subjects such as science and mathematics, tasks that involve hands on use of materials and tools have been developed. The neat result of approximately 15 years of research and development effort is the inclusion of written essays and constructed response tasks in tests intended to assess achievement in various subject areas, including writing history, mathematics, and science. A survey of state assessment practices in the mid 1990s found that 34 states required writing samples and 10 states incorporated constructed response tasks into their assessments. Performance assessment challenges and opportunities. A variety of technical and feasibility issues have plagued attempts to employ PA on a large scale. Among the technical issues that await satisfactory resolution are concerns about ensuring generalizability and comparability of performance across tasks, and concerns about the scoring of complex tasks and the appropriate interpretation of performances. Efforts to use PA have also been limited due to concerns about the relatively high cost of development, administration, and scoring when compared to more conventional testing. Finally, despite the hopes of advocates of PA regarding the likely benefits of its widespread adoption, some analyses have raised concerns about equity issues and the limited positive impact on classroom teaching of using PA in external testing. Despite the problems that have prevented widespread adoption of performance assessment, many educators and assessment experts remain enthusiastic about the potential of PA to address many limitations of other forms of assessment. In particular, advances in the cognitive sciences and technology, along with the increasing availability of Sophisticated technological tools in educational settings may provide new opportunities to resolve many of these issues. For example, the cost of development, administration, and scoring may be decreased through the use of new technologies, and generalizability across tasks may be increased through the use of intelligent systems that offer ongoing assessment well integrated with instruction and sensitive to changes in students' understanding and performance with performance data collected over a long period of time as opposed to one time on demand testing. Quality performance assessment. Many districts and schools today are far too driven by high stakes standardized testing, often to the detriment of our diverse student population. Performance assessments allow all students to demonstrate what they know and can do through real world application. Our Quality Performance Assessment QPA is a new generation of processes and tools that leverage assessment as an essential tool of educational equity and teaching. The QPA framework guides educators in creating meaningful and complex learning experiences in the classroom, preparing graduates for college, career, and beyond. Framework. When there is a technical quality, teachers are able to assess student mastery and can adjust their instruction accordingly. The components of technical quality form a cycle which student learning at the center. That is the essence of QPA framework, which has 5 components and can be entered from any point and or over time with or without facilitation. It is customizable based on the school or district needs, goals, and capacity to design and implement performance tasks as part of their larger assessment systems. Collaborate, cultivate professional communities of practice and educator learning within schools and districts. Align, create a clear vision and mutual understanding of the knowledge, skills, and dispositions students are to acquire. Design, adopt or create and implement tasks with rubrics. Analyze, score work reliably, then collect and analyze data to develop a set of validated assessment as models and use the data to improve instruction and assessment. Lead, commit to and enable a culture of trust and support for assessment work, enabling reflective, collaborative work, and moving initiatives forward. Quality performance assessment takes educators through the process of creating valid and reliable performance assessments, defined as multi step, fair tasks with clear criteria, expectations, and processes that enable students to interact with meaningful content and that measure how well a student transfers knowledge and applies complex skills and dispositions to create or refine an original product and or solution. The educator creates original, fair, and authentic performance assessments, which allow for student voice and choice and provide multiple ways for diverse learners to demonstrate their mastery of academic discipline specific content at high levels of cognitive rigor. The basic performance assessment for learning design stack is designed so that if all three credentials are taken together, They will be they will become more than the sum of their parts. Each micro credential is intended to be able to stand on its own. However, the ideas and activities of each of these credentials support and expand on the others, building a fuller appreciation of performance assessment and its implications. Your task: you will create an original performance assessment, analyze the PA for validity, embed the PA within your curriculum, and administer the PA to at least one class of students. Use the common performance assessment curriculum planning template to guide a design that is tightly aligned to the learning target. In addition, in order to analyze your PA for validity, you will use the assessment validation checklist and the assessment validation protocol. A performance assessment comprises at a minimum completed QPA tool, student instructions, competency-based rubric, and completed assessment validation. Checklist QPA tool, of course, you can include whatever supplemental materials you think will help students to complete the PA. Authentic performance assessments allow students to demonstrate their achievement of a learning target by applying their new learning in a real world setting or with a real world audience. They emphasize student voice and choice by providing opportunities for ownership and decision making and by offering a variety of modalities for students to engage in content and demonstrate discipline specific knowledge and skills. Options for demonstration can include oral presentations, reading products, performances, debates, and others. The performance assessment PA task must be tightly aligned to the learning target, standard, or competency. Performance assessments must support a wide range of learners, including special education students, English language learners, and learners from diverse socioeconomic and cultural backgrounds. As such, assessments should use fair and unbiased language, design that is free of stereotypes, equitable access to resources, accessibility, features, and accommodations for students. What is performance task? A performance task is any learning activity or assessment that asks students to perform to demonstrate their knowledge, understanding, and proficiency, unlike selected response item. Example, multiple choice or matching that asks students to select from given alternatives. A performance task presents a situation that calls for learners to apply their learning in context. Performance tasks are routinely used in certain disciplines such as visual and performing arts, physical education, and career technology, where performance is the natural focus of instruction. Performance tasks can be used to engage students in meaningful learning, since a rich performance tasks establish authentic contexts that reflect genuine applications of knowledge. Students are often motivated and engaged by such real world challenges. When used as assessments, performance tasks enable teachers to gauge student understanding and proficiency with complex processes. Example, research, problem solving, and writing. not just measure discrete knowledge. Performance assessment quality criteria. These criteria aim to communicate design principles for the creation of quality performance assessments. The quality of performance assessment themselves can be evaluated in further depth and detail with the performance assessment quality rubric. In performance assessment, students develop and demonstrate mastery of standards aligned content and skills through completion of authentic and engaging tasks and application of higher order thinking skills through research, modeling, design, analysis, experimentation, and or evaluation. Quality performance assessments have the following characteristic: clear and worthwhile performance outcomes, require application and demonstration of content knowledge, depth of understanding, and higher order thinking skills, are slightly aligned to target content and skill standards and other performance outcomes, make connections to the big ideas and enduring understandings of the course and discipline, integrate knowledge and skills across multiple content and skill standards, are assessed using scoring criteria that focus on the essence of the content or skill standards or other learning targets. Task focus, clarity, and coherence. Focus tasks prompt as students to demonstrate deep learning and mastery of content and application of skills, clear, unambiguous wording and directions, along with criteria for scoring, coherent, alignment of prompt, task materials, and response formats, student products with purpose of task, student engagement, relevance, and authenticity. Reflect a real world task and or scenario based problem, represent content in a way what is authentic, relevant, and meaningful to students. Example, the task is worth doing, has an authentic purpose and or audience, student engagement, choice, and decision making. Offer opportunities for student choice. Example, selecting a research question or topic, selecting sources, deciding how to present findings. Provide for diverse ways of responding to the task. Require student-initiated planning and management of information, data, and ideas. Provide opportunities for self-assessment, peer and teacher feedback, and revision. Student engagement accessibility. Developmentally appropriate. Use task materials that are carefully selected, scripted, or adapted to improve accessibility for all students, including those with reading challenges and learning disabilities. Use a variety of task materials to engage students and provide different entry points into the task. Example, multiple sources representing different perspectives, audio, visual, hands-on, experimentation, etc. Curriculum connected, aligned to the taught curriculum, aligned to the skills that have been developed over time. Elicit and develop rich student language. 1. Provide opportunities to understand, learn, and practice language necessary for success on the task. Provide opportunities to engage in product conversation with peers. Include scoring criteria that require clear use of language. Performance assessment measures subject matter proficiency, requires students to apply the content and skills they have learned, and should present opportunities for students to demonstrate acquisition of 5CS: critical thinking, creativity, communication, collaboration, and citizenship. Describe in the Board of Education's profile of a Virginia graduate performance assessment can be summative or formative in nature. As students learn new skills and content, they should be given multiple opportunities to demonstrate mastery through the use of performance tasks. Both summative and formative performance assessment allow teachers and students alike to identify content that has been mastered, misconceptions, and gaps in learning. The evidence gained through performance assessment may be used to guide future classroom instruction. I will be showing you an image of elements of a quality performance assessment. Now it is totally understand how and what is performance assessment. Keep safe and thank you.